So, what do you do if your employer refuses to issue employment letter for express entry? Today, we're discussing topic that concerns a lot of our clients and people who we talk to every day, and that has to do with employment letters for express entry applications. My name is Olena Weber. I'm regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and today here with me I have Cory Weber, our lead consultant at Weber Immigration. Okay, Cory. So let's talk about our painful topic of employment letters for express entry. Our clients and just generally people who you consult every day always experience big problems with regards to that. So
Yeah.
let's just unpack that. So, number one thing I want to ask you, so when does the applicant for express entry should start requesting employment letter from their employer?
Yeah. So let's separate the two kind of types of employment. Let's say first for your foreign employment. If you are using foreign employment, um, the answer is like you should do it right away. Like you don't have to wait until you have that ITA. You don't have to wait until 2 weeks before of submitting. You should do it right away, right? Because this is often like where people get into the most problems is they wait, they get that ITA, then they start thinking about, oh, I got to contact that employer back home to get the employment letter. And then, before you know it, it's a week or a month later, the employment letter is still not in their hands. Now we're like, 15 days left to submit and they still don't have it and it's panic, right? So the answer to that part of it is as soon and do it now. Like you do not have to have a fresh date on that employment letter if your work experience was done back home long time ago, right? 4 or 5 years ago. If you stopped working, you can have a date of now, like and that's perfectly fine. Absolutely good. And it just is going to give you the peace of mind that it's done, it's correctly, filed away and ready to be used when needed, right? The answer to the other half of the question would be if you are using your current employment, that should be obviously a more fresh date. Like for example, if you're, depending on the scenario, like if you need to hit your 1 year experience, then you have to have a date after that 1 year experience. Same with if it's 2 years or 3 years or whatever it might be. So for that current employment, it could be done, more recently, or should be done more recently. And for that foreign employment, if it's you're not no longer there, do it now, get it done, get it out of the way, because it's just people you overestimate that they have 60 days. It's lots of time, 2 months to apply, but you know what? The 60 days goes by like that. So my recommendation is absolutely to get whatever you can do now done, like out of the way, off your mind, stress free later down the road, right?
Yes, and my next question is, um, so the person who is listening to this, I already know what they're going to say. They're going to say, I already have my old employment letters for my foreign experience. So, what do you have to say about that? If you have old employment letters and you think you're going to use them for express entry application, please listen to this.
Yeah, so it's the most common thing. I talk to people every day, and they say, "Yeah, yeah, I hear your advice. That's great, but I already have it. I got it done 3 years ago." And I say, "That's great, but do you know if it meets the requirements of IRCC?" "Oh, I think so. Yeah." And then I show them the requirements, and they're like, "Oh, I need to have job duties on that letter. Oh, I need to have my hours on that letter. Oh, I didn't know that, and I don't have it actually." And I would say 99.9% of the time, the people who think that they have it done correctly do not. There is one or more elements missing from that employment letter. The other thing to mention is like, the job duties that you were doing back then need to match the knock codes that are like now, right? That are, knock codes changed, things change. So whatever you were doing back then, most likely, if you got that letter done 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, does not match the current knock codes. Things need to match properly. It can't just be done, willy nilly and just submit whatever you got, right? This is where we see a lot of people getting into problems with refusals, strictly regarding that foreign work experience. So, making sure you have the exact requirements from IRCC in terms of what needs to be in there, how long you were employed, how many hours you worked, your benefits that were included, all that kind of stuff, vacation days, hours per week, and then job duties that reflect the knock code, not copy and pasted, but matching. All that needs to be done, and if you have that, you're like pretty much a unicorn, I would say. If you have that already done from years ago, I would say.
Yes, exactly. We just recently had a client coming to us after how many, one or two PR refusals, who had refusal, you know who I'm talking about, who had a
Yeah,
refusal,
two,
strictly,
yeah.
yeah, strictly based on the fact that the duties didn't match the knock number.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's just it's such a heartbreaking thing when, you think you went through all that trouble, you spent all that time waiting, it hopefully you're doing this one time PR, right? You're hopeful that it's just done correctly and you're finished and you get it done in your permanent residence. So it's just yeah, it's heartbreaking when someone comes to you and says, "I didn't do it," and for something as small as like the job duties are missing or something like that, or
The
not done
funny
correctly.
fact is the funny fact is that for this specific person, provincial government of their specific province approved this employment letter. So
Yeah.
provincial government already approved and said like it's okay, and then they used the same employment letter to apply for federal application for express entry, and federal government did not approve it.
Yep. Yeah, that's a heartbreaking thing too when you've gone through half the process and if you're going down the provincial pathway and the province is nominated and you think great, all I need to do is IRCC like, the federal level and I'll be done. But yeah, like the provinces don't do the due diligence that IRCC does, right? And a lot of things can go under the radar for the provinces that IRCC will catch because that's like, that's what they do. So yeah, got to
Exactly.
be careful.
Okay, so let's say the person who is listening to us right now going to contact their employer and they're going to request employment letter. So what if the employer issues the employment letter, but the employment letter is not exactly what is requested or what IRCC expects? So, for example, the employer says like, "Oh, we don't want to put the number of hours here," or "Our policy is that the job
Yeah.
duties we cannot put." So what do you do then?
Yeah, you really need to try to explain to that employer like how important it is, right? And basically plead with them, to help you out because no, if you are missing for a lot of times employers will just have a boilerplate letter that they use and they say the sorry that's just what we do and that's what we give everybody and sorry. So you need to really try to talk to them. You need to explain it to them. And a lot of times, like if they understand the situation that this is for permanent residents, it's very important. They are a lot of the times willing to work with people and to hopefully modify and add perhaps those things that are missing. Um, the other thing that you can think about is trying to if you're going to the HR person for the company and talking to them, maybe try talking to like your old manager, for example. They're allowed to sign the letter too. It doesn't have to be that head of HR lady, because often those HR people are very just strict and they're just like this is it, this is what we do. So I always recommend people go talk to that immediate manager that they might have worked for and say, hey, are you willing to help me out with this letter? Can you add some clarity? And sometimes that is an effective thing too. And that manager will say, yeah, I can do whatever you want, right? You were a great employee, and sure, I'll sign your letter. So those are a couple things you can try to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to reiterate, is that like you should think about requesting an employment letter from your employer as an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Honestly, for a lot of our clients, it takes like 20, 30 emails back and forth. And the tip that Corey gave, like to go to not to HR, but like try to immediate supervisor or maybe high up management, I don't know, VP, owner, whatever it takes.
Mhm.
Sometimes that tip is really, really working. Like I would say that for a lot of our clients, like it really worked. So yeah, just make sure that you do your best essentially to request employment letter. So
Yeah.
Corey, now the last question. So what if your employer just refuses to provide you with employment letter, period, or with, even incorrect employment letter? Like what is
Mhm.
if just they refuse and that's it? What do you do?
Yeah, so if you've requested from, whoever you can and they say no and HR says no and you're all basically out of options, there's only a couple things really that you can do. You can try to, number one, piece it together from other little bits of information. So you might have some job duties on a contract here, and you might have some other information about hours over here, and you can try to piece this together, right, as best you can, and point to the different information through the different documents. That is not always the best solution. It's not always accepted by IRCC. There is a high level of risk that that could still be refused, right? You need to prove that if you did the hours. If you don't have anything that can point at the fact that you worked 40 hours a week, even just piecing the little other bits, you might still have something missing, right? You might have the job duties not done correctly, or you might have nothing that explains your tenure there, how long you worked there. So it can be risky, but it can work too. We have seen it happen, like very rarely, I would say, that we are able to kind of piece it together. That's the first thing. The second thing, to be honest, is just you might not be able to use that experience, right? If you just do not have the documentation to back it up, and you cannot provide the employment letter and you cannot provide the proof that you were paid for the job, then you maybe just don't are not going to be able to claim that work experience. And that's sad to say, but you know, you have to kind of weigh the risks of submitting whatever you might have, um, and at the risk of a refusal, or try to kind of configure your strategy and say, I'm just going to work a like extra year in Canada, and I'm going to drop this or do that, or I'll retape myself up and bump my score some other way, right? So unfortunately, that's the reality for a lot of people that we see, is just like people have this experience and just almost can't use it because they just cannot provide the documentation, unfortunately. So it's sad, but it's a common thing.
Yes, I think everybody has to understand that employment letter is absolutely the most important document in your express entry application. Literally the most important document. And if you don't have it, then again, you can try to piece things together, but in 99% of cases, that is just not possible. Because I'm going to list here, just I want to like go a little bit deeper into this. I'm going to list everything that you need to prove to IRCC. So you need to prove all of your titles. Like if it was more than one position, right? So if you had one title, then one position. If it's multiple, each
Yeah.
position, then you need to prove your duties that are clearly aligned with the knock code. You need to approve the dates, so tenure of your employment, so how long you've been employed. You need to prove hours per week. So not just a statement that it's a full-time employment, but specifically number of hours per week for every week that you work there. You need to prove pay for every period that you work there, and then vacation benefits. That's more of like secondary, right? So
Hmm.
all of these things that I just listed, if you don't have a document to prove it, then you cannot kind of piece it together. And the reality is that most of the times when the person doesn't have employment letter and we're like, okay, what do you have? They're like, okay, I have a contract. So I'm like, okay, a contract. Then in contract, we have hours of work, we have a position, right? Okay, great. What else do you have? I have pay stubs. Okay, great. In pay stubs, we have a pay. But then I'm still missing duties that are aligned with a knock number, right? And I may be missing the end of the employment, right? Like when did it end?
Hmm.
So it's usually like one of those things are missing. So just be super careful if you are trying to apply without employment letter. Again, it is technically possible. We're not saying it's not possible. It's just you have to be very careful because risk of refusal is really high, because it's just
Yeah.
if IRCC expects employment letter, and that's just the end of it, right?
Yeah. Not just the employment letter too. On top of that, you have to prove that you were paid for the work. So you mentioned pay stubs. A lot of times people will be able to get the employment letter and they'll say, my employer is willing to work with me on the employment letter, but I don't have any proof that I was paid. I was paid in cash, or I was paid this way or that way. And so you also need to be able to point at those things, and figure out how to prove that you were paid, right? So you can try bank statements. You can try, if taxes if possible, or other things like income certificates from the employer. So it's not just the employment letter, but the whole employment document package that you need to put together needs to be done in such a way that it ticks all the boxes for IRCC, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So in this video, we're focused on
on the employment.
employment
Sure.
letter, right? But you understand that you cannot just apply with only
With
employment
just
letter.
that.
It
Yeah.
has, yeah, it
Exactly.
has to be a package, right? So usually the package that we submit to IRCC on behalf of our clients, usually it's like 30, 40 pages of all the proof, including employment letter. So yeah, just to be clear. All right. Thank you so much. And guys, please subscribe to our small but growing channel. If you have any questions, leave the comment and we'll try to get to your questions as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.